Welcome to the After Dark podcast, the podcast in which Anthony leads his unknowing friend Konrad by the hand through TV shows. Will Konrad like them? Will Konrad hate them? Will Konrad predict what's going to happen, or will he be lost in the dark? Find out now, only on the After Dark podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony, and that's Konrad.
Hello!
Well, Konrad, that's him. Well, Konrad, how are you?
You can't deviate from the script like this. I can't operate under these kind of conditions. I'm doing well, thank you. I watched a very good movie today. One of my favourites, in fact, for the last 5 years. I'm not going to get into it now, but that's put a bit of.
Was it a rewatch?
It was a rewatch, yeah, and it's put a spring in my step. It set me up well for the rest of the day. What about you?
Interesting. I haven't seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, but I'm looking forward to it.
I've never seen the first one, to be honest. I've never seen it. I've never seen either.
It's one of those ones I've seen bits of the first one, but yeah, I'm doing well, doing very, very well. Midterm next week, which basically means for me, my life stays the same, except I don't have to be on the computer all day during the day.
Excellent.
Because I'm not teaching all day during the day. But yeah, looking forward to that. A little bit of time off. All right, the OA.
Yeah, that's a TV series, and we're here to watch it.
Yeah, we're thinking about covering it, but right. Okay, so what I was going to do before we get into it, I'm going to talk about a few things that I noticed from one, watching it again, and two, from the comments last week. Before I do that, subscribe on the Culture Cave, subscribe on audio app, send us an email, adpodmail@gmail.com. As well as that, yeah, I think that's all I have. There's been a few donations as well, which we're very, very thankful for.
Yeah,
I'm going to be thanking those people by name at the very end of the podcast. So thank you very much if that's one of you. I will be thanking you at the end. So before we get into that, though, leave a comment as well if you want to ask Konrad a question for next week. Konrad, first of all, there's two things I want to talk about. Someone on the comments from last week's video, which I can't remember who they were now, I apologize, but I'm sure people can go and look at those comments and see. They pointed out a possible way in which we were very ignorant last week.
Oh, I mean, there's multiple ways that I'm ignorant at any given time, to be honest. So I'm sure this is true.
So exactly. So we had a conversation about the word abuela, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how that means in Spanish grandmother. Right?
Yes.
And we were talking about how the coach said you'd make your abuela very proud.
Yeah.
Well, this person pointed out. I really hesitate to say this because I especially look like an absolute fool here. Do you notice something about French's mother? We don't really have any evidence whatsoever that French is from a Spanish / Mexican heritage. His mother,
I thought he might have been from like the Philippines or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the commenter pointed out. And so therefore, the use of the word abuela is pointing out the coach's racial ignorance.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's entirely a possibility. I had considered. Listen, how ye of little faith, listeners, right? Going on in old Konrad's head, the cogs were already turning on that. I was like, okay, she looks like she's probably from the Philippines or somewhere that has like a relationship with America where people like are more kind of like Southeast Asian looking. And the cogs in my head were turning, be like, okay, well maybe it's a paternal grandmother or something like that, and it was it was a mixed relationship. So it's not just me thinking, that they're definitely Hispanic because some random coach says it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But at the same time, I think we are doing a lot of mental gymnastics to try and justify why
excuse the racism of that.
Yeah, a middle-aged white male coach. I don't think we really need to be on his side there. If he's, I'm not going to decry racism here, not at all. But I'm just saying, it's interesting that both of us. You didn't put it out there. That's why I said it was mostly me. I didn't at all think of that. I was just like, yeah, okay, abuela, let's go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've exposed our privilege.
Yeah,
quite horrifically there, and chosen an odd hill to die on by defending the white racist, presumably middle-aged football coach.
Yeah, I didn't choose that hill, Konrad. That was all you. Anyway,
check the tape. Last 30 seconds. Anthony James defends racist.
Oh jeez, oh god.
Cancel him. Don't
right,
cancel.
Yeah, you got cancelled in the dark season. Maybe it's my turn, even though I don't agree with this cancelling, but still. Okay, so second thing I want to talk about is I noticed watching this episode, and I don't know why. I I was never even thinking about it because I think I'm just so engrossed in the show. But after they showed the opening credits in episode 1, after like 56 minutes or whatever it was,
Yeah.
they haven't, every episode you watch actually, they are really committing to the long form film style because they haven't actually put it, they've got no opening credits for this show.
No.
There's no title sequence.
They seem to they seem to move it around as well. So like when we'll get into it, in this week's episode, it's I don't, maybe this happened in the second episode and I just missed it. But this week's episode, it's just like bang, title card, done, and then it's over. I don't remember if they did that in the second episode or not, or if there even was a title card. But they're certainly eking out as much space for actual stuff in their episode as they possibly can. Like there's no, as you say, there's no credit sequences. There's very little, time for title cards or anything like that.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of shows in the last sort of 5 years, say 10 years, where people talk about it's like a long film, Yeah. Thinking about Stranger Things and stuff, because they have like literally it's like a sequel in the original, But this properly is committing to that, in my opinion. Like this is what the first show I've watched where I'm like, actually, this is just like a long, continuous story. Like you just get thrown into the next one. I mean, there is structure to the episodes as we discussed before. Like you have the story, the boys, the story. You sort of have that going on as well.
Yeah.
But they are committing to the long form movie type thing.
Yeah,
anyway.
and I mean those structural elements exist in films as well. So then that kind of consistently returning to a storyteller in the present story structure is not something that's exclusively the domain of television. And I think that there is definitely something to that. I think I don't think it's necessarily exclusively the OA either. I think television in general has moved away from the the television in like the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, with the exception of some of the HBO stuff. A lot of it feels very cheesy now because it fits into those things that television has gotten away from, like freeze frames at the end of episodes and credits rolling over a freeze frame. Like you would literally never see that in a television show that wasn't doing it to take the piss out of that kind of thing. Now, like WandaVision or something like that. Like imagine if the OA ended like this episode ends with like Prairie getting bashed on the back of the head and it freeze frames with her head like, oh, and then like credits roll. Special thanks to these characters.
That would be good.
It would be. I mean, I would love that if it did it, but it would strike a different tone. Let's say that.
100%.
So yeah, this is prestige television, is what this is.
Yeah, it is. It is. So let's get into prestige television then, into the breakdown, Konrad.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down.
All right, so this week's episode opens in a big box store. I was thinking last week they were in the first episode they were in like a shopping center like this, and I was like, shopping center? I don't know what to call it. Let's call it a big box store.
Yep, that's what it is.
I've got the terminology, Konrad.
Department store? Is that the word you were looking the phrase you were looking for?
Yeah, but it's more than it's a big warehouse. It is a department store. Yes, it is. That is what I was searching for, but. That's what they were in the first one, but I think this one's very much like a big box sort of thing, where
it's like an Argos, is what they're in.
Yeah, like an Argos warehouse out the back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a big box store. A reporter called Patricia Nola comes up to
Nancy,
Prairie's mom, Nancy. Yeah, Nance, and says, I've covered a different boy called Jamie Price. I would love to spend some time with the family and write a book for Prairie. You'll need the money.
Yeah, I think. This reporter gets... she's not that prominent in this episode. She gets a couple of scenes, and she seems relatively well-intentioned, or at least she seems quite honest that her intentions are to make both herself and the... I forgot. Have we found out this family's surname yet?
Johnson.
Yeah, that's it, Johnson, yeah. Make both herself and the Johnsons a lot of money. So she is at least honest about, her capitalistic tendencies here. But her insistence when Nancy was clearly uncomfortable, it made me feel a bit uncomfortable as well. It's like, just read the room, please. Stop being so pushy.
Yeah, it really felt to me like, she was so close to getting the family in, that she couldn't let it go at that point. So she obviously is putting on a face for a certain thing. Also, the thing she was at the dinner, what she was explaining to Prairie, I was like, you're being a bit brash with this.
It's a little presumptuous as well to be like, I think I gave this boy closure. It's a bit like, okay, like that feels like you're lending your work a sense of importance that perhaps it doesn't deserve, and you're kind of puffing yourself up a bit here. And also, a key point to mention at this point is never ever trust an author who carries around copies of their own books. Like that is like that is red flag numero uno for authors.
I think it's very interesting to me because it's sort of, it feels to me like this is like the beginning of them letting the outside world in. Like this character coming in is like, obviously they feel like it's under their control, but it's sort of how pernicious and how sort of like a trap the outside world is going to be to Prairie. Because the only time we've ever seen her in the outside world is when she's going off and doing stuff with the boys or Steve, and apart from that, like, we didn't really see her. This is the first time we've actually seen her doing anything with Nancy outside of the house, really. Yeah. Except for that walk that they took. So,
well, I mean, and that's app as well. You know, like it's. I think of what we get the sense.
And what the stuff with Hap, you mean?
Yeah, like so. Yeah. So I mean, the sense I'm getting from Prairie is that she's, you know, this very innocent character who is essentially just continuously getting chewed up and spat out by the world at large, which is probably why Abel and Nancy are so protective of her, or partially why, anyway.
Yeah. So, what do you think about the fact that she was reminded the Homer with the sweatshirt?
I can't tell if this is a joke or not, but like her sort of longingly saying Homer as she looks down at a sweatshirt, and it being like this really nice kind of like shot and reverse shot of her and Nancy like standing opposite each other. It's really, really like kind of artistically presented. And then she picks up and puts on the sweatshirt and it's got this massive wolf on it. I'm just like, okay. What is Homer going to be like? Like the things that we've learned about Homer so far, that he's like a college football player and apparently like big wolf hoodies remind Prairie of him. So, I mean, I know we meet him in this episode, but it paints...
Did he come across like a wolf to you?
I'm not sure. Like he comes across like a bit of a weirdo, but then they're all weirdos. So like,
he's been in there for a year. Like,
that is true. Yeah. He doesn't know what's cool anymore. But yeah, it did make me laugh, like her kind of like this really like potentially emotional high note, and she puts the hoodie on. It's just like something that Napoleon Dynamite would wear.
Yeah, exactly. So the dinner with Nola comes to an end because Prairie's like, well, his story has an end. Yeah. But mine is only just beginning.
So I interpreted that to mean both... that from Prairie's point of view and from the filmmaker's point of view, or the showrunner's point of view, that this is them hinting that there is more to come, more dynamic stuff to come from the present. That we're going to get to a point in this series. I assume it's in this series. Maybe it'll go through into the second season. But we're going to get to a point where Prairie's story reaches the present day, and then the story continues from there. So I think. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there, and I feel like this is the show signposting that is going to happen.
Yeah. I read it the same way the first time I saw it too. So Prairie continues her story.
Yeah.
I really like Prairie. Like the way the writers do this. They have a really good way of having a really cool line. And a really deep line to get you back into her story. Yeah. And the line this time was, the first time you wake up in captivity, you think that you're free. Yeah. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah. So you lose your freedom many times before you finally believe it is a really nice kind of poetry to that dialogue from Homer.
Yeah, it's lovely. So it's revealed now what it actually looks like, this room.
Yeah.
I kind of gave you a hint last week saying that there was two voices, but that wasn't a spoiler because in the English subtitles that I had on, because I have a crazy 2-year-old who's screaming, it said that there were two different voices. But if you didn't read it in the subtitles, you wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
So there's pellets that are making her sick to her stomach. They're sort of in this glass.
Pellets. They're just chicken nuggets. Yeah, I've seen McNuggets before. That's what that is.
Chicken nuggets. Yeah. So they're in this like sort of plexiglass hexagon.
It's like pentagon. An asterisk kind of
it's like
thing.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all of their own little thing, and they have like a little river running through where they sort of wash themselves in it and stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think about the setup of the lab?
I mean, I think this is an episode of kind of presentational dichotomies, I think, because there are elements both of the relationship between Hap and Prairie that are almost touching, but they're really, really cleverly juxtaposed against the kind of horrific reality of their relationship, which is that he has kidnapped her and is essentially abusing her for a scientific experiment. And I feel like that dichotomy is kind of captured in the presentation of this lab, where it feels like care has gone into preserving the well-being of these people to a certain extent. So they have plants in their cells. They have this kind of babbling brook that runs through, which is, it's not purely perfunctory. They could have a tap or something, that serve the same purpose, but for whatever reason they have this stream instead. There's a certain kind of artistry to it, which I feel like speaks quite poignantly to Hap's character, where he doesn't want to view himself as a villain. He doesn't want to view himself as a bad guy. And I feel like these little concessions that he's made in the design of this lab allow him to continue to see himself as someone who is serving a greater good, and doing so in the most sensitive way that he possibly can. But so I think it's a really interesting setup for that reason.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, to add to that as well, the fact that he's got like the glass sides, meaning that they can actually see and talk to each other.
Yeah. Although he's probably cleaning the windows at the start of this scene, which I was like, come on, like, you don't need to do that. Like, that's unnecessary. Like, just waking everyone up in the morning with the bloody squeegee on the on the windows.
It's got to keep it sterile. It's a science experiment.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
But there's a bit of there's almost a little bit of jealousy going on, or even just shock from some of the other inmates, because Hap offers to get Prairie some Braille books.
Yeah.
She says she's going to lose her mind down there. She says they need sunlight. The others aren't blind, so they don't need it like I do. So what do you think about that sort of? And then eventually, obviously, she does go up. So
Yeah.
there's a few characters who are sort of like, hang on, what's going on here?
I think part of it, to be honest, is a sexual attraction. I think there are I think I mentioned it briefly in the last episode, and I think we kind of joked about it, to be honest. But Hap feeding Prairie oysters, like, that's an aphrodisiac. It's a very kind of sexual food, I guess, and in some people's views. And I think there is and like in this episode as well, there's a lot of like close shots of hands touching when they are upstairs. So I think there is a sexual element to their relationship. I don't necessarily think Prairie reciprocates it, but from Hap's point of view, he definitely finds her attractive. And then I think also there is the vulnerability of her being blind, that he can't escape from. So to kind of justify this to his own to himself, he has to be more give her more rope, essentially, and allow her more freedoms in order to make himself feel better about this. So I think it's purely selfish and self-serving why he does this. But I kind of understand why the others, particularly, well, I guess all of them have been there for a while. We don't actually find out how long. Is Rachel and Scott the other two? I think.
Yeah.
How long they've been there for? But I mean, Rachel was there with a girl who, this has gone in the Theory Matrix, a girl called August, who I'm assuming was probably her sister, because Rachel is screaming about how August needs her when Prairie first wakes up. I'm assuming they've been there for a while, given like, the fact they all have a routine. So I can certainly see why they would be bitter about Prairie turning up and getting to make herself sandwiches.
Yeah. So they didn't know about the sandwiches yet. And I will say that when we do get to that point, Sarah was quite selfless there. But so Rachel wakes up and says, "Where is August? She needs me enough." And then sort of, I think Homer goes, "Enough. He's up. He's taken her upstairs." Which is interesting. We do find out later on what happens to Rachel. There's also another nice line that says, "Nothing's more isolating than not being able to feel time." And then Prairie I gauged what sort of seems to be her morning routine. She wakes up in the morning and she tells herself, "I'm going to get out of here."
She tells herself she's alive first.
I'm alive, first of all, yeah.
Yeah, which I feel like they do a really good job of communicating how her blindness is impacting or exacerbating her isolation here. That, if she wakes up and all she can see is darkness, and she just has these walls around her. I feel like it would be very easy to start going insane in that kind of situation. So as you say, she has this mantra in the morning where she's like, I am alive, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm not already dead. And then does she goes and like drinks water after that? I can't actually remember what the rest of her
she goes
routine
and drinks water, but they're all washing up in the water at the same
so
time.
gross.
And then we get like Scott, or I like to call him Seth Rollins. Who's a wrestler, for anyone who doesn't watch wrestling, looks exactly like Scott. Google Seth Rollins.
He has the same
CrossFit Jesus.
Same dickish personality as Seth Rollins from what I've seen of this as well.
yeah, exactly. So she gets a bit of crap from Seth Rollins or Scott for drinking the water. I mean, I think Prairie was the one punished most by it. Although she did throw up. She threw up in it after.
Yeah, she did throw up in it. That's true. But I mean, it's like they know she's blind. So someone could have said, "Don't drink the water." I guess maybe Homer does start warning her as she's doing it, I think. Scott is on my bad list. I'll say that much for this episode.
Scott would have wanted her to drink it so that he could complain at her for drinking it.
Yeah, absolutely. He was relishing the opportunity to talk down to someone.
Exactly. Okay, so Hap takes her upstairs, much to the surprise of everyone else.
Yeah.
She gets the sun, but then, in a really interesting moment, she turns around, gets the knife. I think we all sort of had a feeling what we wanted her to do with the knife as soon as she got it.
Yeah.
And this sort of whole scene where she gets the knife and she starts making a sandwich and she makes him a sandwich. The amount of tension that was built in the scene, I absolutely loved it. And that tension that's built in this scenario with Hap and Prairie is something that will come back in this episode again later on. But it also comes back time and time again. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your response to that as we move forward. But what did you think about this tense scene where she's making him a sandwich?
So I didn't find this initial one too tense because I felt like the tension, it could have been tense, but I felt like they deliberately immediately diffused it by having her grabbing it and going back to making a sandwich. Her hand brushes up against the butcher's knife, which, by the way, why is he making sandwiches with a butcher's knife? Like, use a bread slicer. Like Hap needs a female touch around the house, clearly, because he doesn't know what he's doing. But the hand brushes up against the knife, but then she picks up the bread and just sniffs it. And I feel like that is kind of immediately diffuse the tension. Like the fact that she has gone to the bread first before the knife, to me, says a lot about Prairie's nature and a lot about her character, that she will very rarely, if ever, stray from her nature, which is to be, if not a good person, true to her kind of peaceful nature. But there is definitely a tension. There is definitely a tension in this scene, although it's dissipated quickly. I felt like the tension between these two really comes back later in the episode when it we'll talk about it more a bit later. But it reminded me of the movie Misery. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that kind of captive who's collecting drugs to try and drug their captor. That's really, really brilliantly done in this episode. But I do also feel, actually, with Prairie, the thing that I can't really get a read on, which is a testimony to how well acted, I will say, rather than well written, because she's not saying much, well acted the character is, that I do get the sense that maybe she's deliberately manipulating Hap as well. Like, maybe there is an element of her that's like, well, I'm blind, I'm not going to overpower or kill, like, I'm very unlikely to kill this guy with a knife, so I'm going to kill him with kindness instead. I do feel like the sort of cogs are turning and there are active choices being made here, rather than her just being like, I'm a nice person, I'm going to do nice things and hope the best happens. So I'll be interested.
I have got written in my notes here that Prairie seems to be playing 4D chess while the rest of them want her to play checkers.
I think she's a lot smarter than she's initially presented here, smarter than you could potentially read her as being from doing this. So I'm interested to see how they develop that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So in terms of for me, this scene did have a bit more tension than you had, but I think that's because you sort of, maybe the connection between you and the character of Prairie, you took it as like, okay, she's not like that, it's gonna be fine, you know. For me, it was all about the foreboding Hap just staring at her, and even like the score during that scene was a really prominent heartbeat. Obviously, Prairie's fear of how this is going to be perceived, and then as soon as he took the bite, that stopped dead. That score, and I viewed that moment when he took the bite as the release of tension for me personally.
I can see that.
I didn't think necessarily that she was in risk of being killed there or something, but it wasn't that tense, you know what I mean? But there was a slight amount of tension there. This is sort of alluding to what we'll see later. So she gets taken down. Oh, she says she doesn't want to have a slice of the sandwich because the other ones don't get it either. So then he says, "Make them all sandwiches. I don't care." And I thought to myself when he said that, I was like, "Really, Hunter? Really? You don't care? Because you've got 4 people in the basement and you're feeding them pellets every day. You really seem like you care." You know?
Well, and I think, again, this goes back to this really brilliant characterization of Hap, where it's like, he is doing monstrous things, but I don't think he could. I think this is true of most of the best villains. They have to see themselves as good people in order to sleep at night, basically. He's not a mustache twirling Machiavellian bad guy who just wants to hurt people. He thinks what he's doing is the right thing. I'm interested to see why he's so convinced of that. And I feel like this is part of that he's not going to, like, if someone suggests, oh, we should make them sandwiches to make them comfortable, he's not going to oppose it because, you know, he doesn't want to be monstrous to these people. He wants to be kind to them. But at the same time, he has this almost like psychopathic ability to shut himself off from empathy and just say, well, it's fine. You know, these food pellets have every nutritional element that these people need to survive. I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. What else can I do?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing more I could possibly do to make these people feel comfortable. So it's this brilliant characterization of this villainous character.
Yeah, awesome. And then she takes the sandwiches down. Hap makes them show her some gratitude. And then Scott goes, "Well, why'd you have to fuck it up with mustard?"
Yeah. I'll tell you what, like, Steve remains on the top of my shit list on this episode because he does a couple of really shitty things. But Scott is racing up the charts after him. You know, he rapidly ascended that list. So it's going to be a battle of it when those two really like get some screen time. It's going to be a clash of the shitty titans to see who's the worst character.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So Homer, whenever she gets back, Homer's like, now I will say, he came across as a little ignorant to what blind people are. Because he was like, "Hey, you! Yeah, come here! Yeah. Yelling at her. She's like,
I'm blind, I'm not
away.
Deaf, you idiot."
She goes over. He gives her the whole story about his NDE story and like sort of the NDE study that Hap was wanting him to partake in to get $500. He wanted it to show his baby mama that he can provide as like a sort of a token of his ability to do that. Didn't go very well. He got taken away by Hap, of course, and here he is now. And so, what do you think about his story first of all?
He didn't actually say what happened, did he? I believe August, that's her name, right? That is the only one of this group who tells us what her NDE actually was. Is that
no? Rachel. August is the one that's dead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so Rachel is the only one who tells who tells us what actually happened to her. I don't believe Homer says
he doesn't. No, we know that his has something to do with a football accident from whenever she was receiving.
Oh no, we saw it on the news, didn't we? Yeah, like, or the YouTube.
On the YouTube,
yeah. So I think it's again like interesting characterization here, particularly as a kind of as what is essentially an introduction to the character, or our first real introduction to the character. That even in this situation, their focus is on sending $500 back to their family. Obviously, he has ulterior motives. He wants to, get word out to get them saved. But there is still this focus in his mind of sending money home to prove that he can look after his child. And also the fact that he knows it's a boy seems interesting as well.
That is interesting to me because she was only 2 months pregnant, his partner at the time, and whenever Prairie said, "Well, couldn't it be a girl?" he was properly like, "Did you not hear what I said? Are you not listening to me?" And I was like, "Oh, I can see why you see a bit of Homer and Steve there, Prairie."
Yeah, there are interesting swings with Homer's character in this episode because he goes from being like, "You're coming on a bit strong here, Homer," to someone who is very kind of emotionally attentive and caring later in the episode. It's very interesting for him.
I think it's because as well, like he didn't want to let someone in quickly. You know, it took a while, and once he saw that I think Prairie was pure of heart, or like actually a genuine person, he came and warmed to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But yeah, I really like how they diffuse the, diffuse is probably the wrong word. How they ignite this emotional moment by with the end of this scene where they start pumping gas into the chamber, which proved one of my theories wrong.
What was one of your theories?
So I thought, like, when Prairie is locked away at the end of the second episode, she remarks on the floor being wet, and I thought that they were going to fill them with water or something to partially drown them to trigger the NDE. But obviously, gas is a far simpler way of doing it.
All right, so you put that into your theory matrix with a lot of detail. I remember we were having that discussion last week.
Listen. I can't ask the leopard to change its spots. All right, this is what I do.
All right, no bother. Okay, yep. So that happened. I will just say, who would have thought after the first episode that the one character who is the best at predicting things and knew her son the most was Steve's mum? Because let me tell you, it got sexual.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't get sexual in the direction that she was implying it was going to get. Steve, once again...
yes, it was the opposite direction.
Yeah, Steve categorically misreading a situation.
But if Steve's mom had a theory matrix, Konrad, we'd give her a point for that.
You know the bit in... this is going to be a detour, and I apologize to the listeners now, but you know the bit in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they're trying to get Charlie a date because the waitress is sleeping with someone else.
Yeah, and that's 100 episodes.
Well, they take him to a restaurant, and Mac plays like the owner of the restaurant, and Dennis plays the owner, and it goes so badly wrong, and they like say, "Oh, just make a move," and he kind of like grabs at her, and then they berate him and say, "We didn't mean just stab at her breasts." That's what this feels like from Steve here, just like. What are you like? In what universe was this move going to work on this woman who was like 10 years older than you and clearly not interested in you?
And she's just got out of like basically like a home prisoner situation.
Yeah, like just and I think to be honest, like I joke about it. I think it's quite a realistic. This episode was full of them actually for a series where in the first couple of episodes I was like, there's some iffy character work here. I don't know if I believe all of the characterization in these first two episodes. This one I felt like there was a lot of good done. So Steve is this character who is so like he builds himself up based on his sexual prowess and his sexual exploits a lot, you know, and he's clearly this character who just can't fathom a woman who wouldn't be sexually interested in him because that's how he defines himself, at least partially. A significant part of his personality is based on how he defines himself sexually, and I think this is a great example of that like he's so wrapped up in this own idea of his sexual prowess and his sexual attractiveness that he can't read the signals from someone who isn't interested in him at all, and he's like, well, I'm just going to grab at you, and that'll initiate the whole situation because it has to go that way because how could you not find me attractive? And then he gets really pissed off when it doesn't go his way.
Yeah, he gets very pissed off, and he's upset, and he goes downstairs, and French says, "What did you do to her?" And then Steve says, "I'm not a paedophile." Okay.
I'm glad French called him on that. Just what are you talking about, you moron?
Maybe it's like maybe it's an allusion to Prairie being in like an infantile state at this time of this story. I think that's a pretty harsh way to make him, a wider symbolic point. But
I don't think you're giving Steve an awful lot of credit.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be Steve's doing they sacrificed Steve for that bit of symbolism. But so they have a fight. These two are always at each other's throats. So they have a little fight. Which does get pointed out later on. Do you want a sweet memento to remind you of all those good times you've had listening to the After Dark podcast? Well, how about pick up a t-shirt with the brand new design by my wife Ema. It depicts Konrad and I going into the cave. What will we get up to next? Link in the description. Yep, so BBA is chugging a can of Monster.
Chugging a Monster before school. I'm sure there's teachers around the world who are like, yep, I can empathize with that. I need to get some
I've done it
caffeine in me.
before. I've done it before. As I told you, I don't take fizzy drinks anymore. But I have definitely about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe I had a wee Monster before school, just to psych myself up.
Yeah,
you know?
just to get the juices flowing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And then Rod, is sort of Rod Spence calling on behalf of her brother's estate.
Yeah.
So we find out that her brother has passed away.
Yeah.
And then we have a really, really lovely moment. Now, I will say, I'm not a fan of people holding on to. So, like, for example, right, Afterlife, Ricky Gervais. I'm not a fan of the fact that him watching videos of his dead wife shows that he can't move on.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that I disagree in this stage, though. So she's got a message from her brother on her phone say, "Hey Otto, it's Theo. Just thrown out a lie and see what comes back." And she keeps listening to it because she just misses her brother.
Yeah.
I didn't get the same dislike from this moment, to be honest with you, as I do in something like Afterlife, where it's very much a crutch that the show leans on. Yeah, what did you think of this part?
Yeah, it didn't bother me too. I kind of know what you mean. It's sort of like narrative shorthand. It's like we need to show that Theo is dead, or their brother Theo is dead, and we need to show how much he meant to her. And this is a quick way of doing that that's relatively effective. It's not an ideal way of doing it, because I think if you were really committed to fleshing out this character, and this isn't a criticism of the OA, because maybe they'll do this going forward, they will show some of the backstory of BB-8 with her brother. I would rather they did that than just have like a throwaway scene in the car. But as an introduction to it, I didn't mind too much. And BB-8, the lady who plays her, does a lot with very little here in her facial expressions and her performance to
sadness.
To convey the sadness. Also, Otter is an interesting surname, a nickname.
Yeah, it is actually. Well,
I don't know how I'd feel about that as a woman.
Otter's come across a bit melancholic. But
yeah,
I say sadness because did you know Phyllis Smith, who plays BB-8, is actually sadness in Inside Out?
I did not know that. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Very interesting. Very, very voice of sadness.
She's typecast as an upset person.
Yeah, exactly. So she goes into the classroom. Someone's drawn like a stripper version of her on the board.
Yeah, twerking away on the on the whiteboard.
She's actually a little tickled by it, and she draws a cube around it.
Yeah.
I think I've gauged that she is a maths teacher based on her PowerPoint she was putting together in the first episode. So she's got a little bit of sense of humor. Put him inside a box. Schrodinger's BB-8, and basically Steve comes in. I don't know why. She comes in and goes, "Hey, Steve. Check out that."
I was like, are you trying to like recruit him to find out who did this or something? Because she just like, calls him in and was like, "I put my neck out for you," and then he looks at the board and then they just leave it there. It was a weird little moment that I didn't really understand why it was there.
It is a weird little moment. I think it's maybe showing that she's sort of ditching the formality of being the teacher role to him. Maybe she's seeing him more as a friend now.
Yeah.
So we get the confirmation that she did stick her neck out for to the principal and his parents. So it looks like maybe he'll be sticking around for the time being.
I hope so, because he's got a television show to be in. So
yeah, exactly. So as he walks away down to his new class, I just wanted to point out, I thought it was really cool. This has nothing to do with the show, but the actual the perspective take on the physics sign on the wall of the corridor. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice that at all.
So he's walking through the corridor into his classroom, and they've got the name of physics is written in the corridor, but it's down a corridor. But where the camera is, it looks like it's just written across in the same size font, but it's actually had to be drawn in a way that the perspective of where you're standing,
wider at one end and taller
exactly.
at one end. Yeah,
it's really cool. It made me think if we had that in the science part of our school, I'd be going to the science teachers and saying, "Hey, get that done because it's so cool."
But I like the set of the framing of Steve, looking at the exit sign and then looking at the door he's going to go, and then walking towards the exit sign and then be like, "Oh, got a left turn here," and actually going to his class. It was a little bit of fun on the part of the filmmakers. That
the other turn was probably going to be him leaving, but he was going to leave in a place where they didn't have an exit sign. So he's doing alternative alternative school. Not for your typical student.
No, this video is the most patronizing shit I've ever seen in my life, and I loved it. It was just like,
can you imagine being someone like with a load of troubles or not, like, not fitting in school? Teachers keep telling you off, and then you go into this little room. It's like, hello, you
you're
are not
special.
The normal. Yeah.
The two people, or the girl who sits next to him, who pours water all over herself because she believes that the kid opposite her is eyeing her up, and then walks and then storms out. Really gave me. Do you remember the episode of The Simpsons where Homer gets a new job and they move to like a perfect town, but then Bart gets put into the remedial class and he's got like the "I start fires" kid. This had big Bart Simpson in the remedial class energy for me. Like Steve is like, "Oh, I'm the big man on campus. I'm gonna punch kids in the throat," and then he gets there and all the students in this class like, "You have not seen a fucking thing yet. We were like, you think you're bad."
Yeah. I liked that she said. She's poured water all over herself, and he goes, "You get a good look," and and the other guy's like, "I'm just working on my geometry."
Yeah, and Steve's like, "That's my water."
Yeah, there's no Euclid on my tits.
That was a
so
great
funny.
little scene.
But also, I cannot imagine. Like, this is one of the times where I'm very happy that I teach an all boys school, because I cannot imagine. If a 17 or 18-year-old student said that to me on the way out the door.
Oh, that line. That was an absolute zinger.
Who do I contact first?
That guy needs to check himself into a burn ward, because that was a great line. I mean, and to be fair as well, like, that guy does not give a shit about anyone in that class.
No.
Sitting there with headphones in, just being like, with his feet up, being like, just press spacebar. It's like, oh, okay, great. You're really gonna win some hearts and minds with this effort you're putting in here, Mr. Remedial class teacher.
It goes back to the conversation that Prairie had with BBA in the first episode, because she's saying, like, this is the lost pupil, this is the one, this is your first reason or whatever, and then look where these pupils who need help go to this teacher who has no bother, like, just, probably maybe not even a teacher, like, maybe
just like circling the drain. It's like no one is helping these kids at all.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so story continues. Here's something I can tell you, Prairie says. It's really hard to kill a man. It's even harder to allow a man to die.
Yeah. Foreshadowing for what's going to come. It's and then we get straight into. Also, it's interesting that she just forgives Steve straight away. I feel like that speaks to Prairie's nature, where it's like, yeah, that was awkward. Steve, come and sit down. It's fine. Like, I feel like there's again, we see these equal parts of Prairie's character where she's kind and forgiving, but this is also pragmatic. Like, she needs him for something. We haven't really seen why she needs these people, but she needs him for something. So the pragmatism outweighs any discomfort she might feel at his unwanted advances, but then we get straight into the misery stuff with her stealing sleeping pills, and so
she's like his housekeeper now, and so she starts stealing sleeping pills because he needs them to sleep, putting them in a little pot or something, a little mint tin or something. Now the tension's really building at this stage, isn't it?
The bit in particular where she's hoovering or vacuuming, excuse me, for our international listeners, the house, and she runs off to get more. Can't actually remember what it is she runs off to get. Is it more sleeping pills that she runs off to get? Or does she go to get the ring?
No, she doesn't get the ring.
Oh, she gets the ring when the EpiPen bit, doesn't it? Yeah,
the
that's
EpiPen
right.
part. I think actually that's just the first time she goes and gets the sleeping pills, and puts them into the little
but
pot.
It's just
showing us how
tense.
she does it.
Yeah, yes. it's really, really tense, which I loved. I thought it was a great way to remind us that this situation is precarious. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say because she's been kidnapped, but there is a kind of normality to the life that Prairie is living, or at least the part of her life that we are shown, that could kind of lull us into a false sense of security. And I really like the kind of tension here that underpins it all and makes it very stressful. And then there's a great bit, like slightly later on in this scene, where she's actually cooking him the stew, and I think Hap talks about things from our past, and he mentions like this crazy British guy who'd go to far off places and be like, look at this Arctic wilderness, something always survives. It's like, Are you talking about David Attenborough?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I love the fact that Hap was inspired by David Attenborough.
Yeah, but it's also like this crazy British guy. It's like, David Attenborough is a knight, sir. Thank you very much. Like he's not some like late night talk show host that you could just dismiss. The man is a national treasure, as well you know, Jason Isaacs.
Yeah. Also, I am actually pretty sure that David Attenborough is worldwide known now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's pretty famous.
So therefore it's really showing how this story takes place in what, like 2000, was it
2011? Was it, when is this? 2016 this was released.
Yeah.
So 2009 probably. I didn't actually see a date when she was found, so maybe it's set in the future or something, but
yeah, but the fact is that Hap is very not keyed into the world.
Yeah. So have you heard of this new guy, David Attenborough? Like he's
a new up and comer.
Yeah, like I watched this thing called Planet Earth. It's unbelievable. I can't wait to see what everything else he does. What are you doing, Hap? Like what have you been watching on TV for the? Or actually, he's quite similar to me in that respect, to be honest. Like where I arrive at these TV shows like 30 years after they've aired. But yeah, I enjoyed the kind of guarded reference to David Attenborough there. It was very fun.
Yeah, exactly. It was. Also, whenever he's eating, there's a really interesting like close up of his face. There's like a real close, tight shot on his mouth, and the onions spilling out and stuff.
There's a lot of mouth noise in this scene, which is always uncomfortable, to be honest. And Prairie learns a valuable lesson about how to poison people, which is that you poison the serving, not the whole meal, Prairie, because A, it dilutes the poison, and B, it means that if you have to eat some of it, you're also going to poison yourself.
Yeah, like if she had just dumped that all in his bowl, that one spoon would have got him.
I probably would have killed him. Yeah, like I mean, like that much sleeping powder, like that's a lot of can't remember what it's called now, but the stuff in the sleeping pills.
Yeah, I have no idea what it's called.
A couple of spoons of that might well have killed him. So yeah,
I mean, if she had known he was allergic to tomatoes before he had it, she could have really planned to really get him.
Listen, she's not a master assassin, and she never claimed to be. So I'll give her some leeway. But I was watching it like, why would you pour it into? No, it's like you've never seen a movie, Prairie. Like you need to pay attention to these things. But I'm
pretty sure like Hap says to her when he's like choking on the tomatoes, because basically he starts having an anaphylactic shock.
Yeah.
He's not quite in the.
I didn't realize you could actually have that kind of allergic reaction to tomatoes. It's interesting. I guess you can have it to anything.
Yeah, well, I've never actually heard. I've never met someone in real life with a tomato allergy like that, but I have met people with allergies to things like that, which you wouldn't expect. Like I have a friend who's like that with mangoes.
Okay.
So it probably, I don't know if it's everything, but it's definitely more than you think.
Yeah.
But basically, he starts choking, or he starts having this shock, and he says to her, "You don't know the code to the door. They're all going to die down there."
Yeah.
And it puts her in this position where she's like, "Right, I'll probably have to save him then." For me, like, we could talk about the way that was portrayed, and I think it was very believable the way it was. But I think if I was in that position, I would probably be like, yeah, but they're not gonna like. We've got days.
Yeah. I mean, they've got water. They'll live a week.
Like they've got water.
Yeah,
you live up to a couple of weeks with just water.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm going to spend the next few days searching for a phone in this house. You know?
But I also think actually that like I felt like this again is kind of like this is almost like the climax of that back and forth between them, where even before he says that, I feel like she is kind of weighing up her options here. Like there's a not insignificant part of her mind that's like saying, I can't just let this person die, even if they are monstrous. I can't have that on my conscience. Which perhaps speaks to that kind of cosmic spirituality that she spoke to BB-8 about in the first episode, where she believes in something greater than herself, and a kind of a universal set of ethics that she subscribes to, or a sense of energy that she always wants to maintain hers as positive. So I feel like she was always kind of leaning towards saving him, and then when he says that, I think it tips her over the edge. But there's some great kind of tonal whiplash, like deliberate tonal whiplash in this scene where we go from him reminiscing about his home life and kind of touching her hand, albeit in a like creepy way, because I don't think she particularly likes it, but it's shot quite intimately and quite closely. But there's also that tension, because we know what Prairie's plan is, to him then suddenly going into anaphylactic shock and the tension ramping up. And then suddenly it's like, wham, there's a dead body, and we find out what happened to
August
August.
is dead.
Yeah, and it's this great kind of it's this great back and forth in this scene, and it really catches you off guard a couple of times with where it goes, which I found really compelling.
Yeah. So what did you think about the fact that she found the dead body?
So we know that she was taken upstairs shortly before Prairie arrived, because Rachel was still complaining about it when Prairie got there. The fact he's preserving her body in, I guess, like formaldehyde or something, initially to me seemed odd. Particularly if, as we find out later, he's just planning on burying it. Like, why did he preserve it in order to bury it? I think like my read of this, and this is one that kind of went into the theory matrix as well, is that when he's gassing these people, so as he gassed Scott, there is potential that someone will die as a result of it, because he's gassing them to the point of near death in order to trigger an NDE and study them. And unfortunately, sometimes you push them too far and they die as a result. So that's my assumption of what has happened to August here. And I think he's kept her body or preserved her body for study before finally burying it a week later, or however long it's been since she was taken.
It was be quite a while, actually, because it took Prairie a long time to get those pills.
Yeah, I guess so, actually. Yeah, so maybe it's a month or two or something like that.
Yeah, so Scott's a classy guy. Prairie goes back down, very rattled.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say what he said, but he's a classy fella.
All I'll say about Scott is that when they're talking about what they're going to put in the letter, and how, like, I love the fact also, just as an aside, that they're doing kind of like a modern message in a bottle here. Like, it's a really nice little touch. But when they're going around saying, like, all right, Rachel, who should we write to for your family? Prairie, who should we write to for your family? They're all writing someone down. I wasn't that surprised when it got to Scott and he said that there's no one. It's like, well, color me surprised, Scott.
Well, I do know that the reaction of Scott whenever she started asking him, like, how did you get here, whatever, why did you do this, whatever, and he was like I was high, really. And the way, and the sort of the look of him as well, he's very thin. I think to myself, I think he's probably an addict,
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that to his character. I think that he's very guarded about what's happened, and he seems it seems like he could easily be an addict. I also think it's notable that if you take August as Rachel's sister, and you take her, she also has like a brother who's in a wheelchair, which you find out about. I believe it's in this scene where she's talking about how he actually got in a wheelchair.
Yeah, they all go around the circle, sort of.
Yeah, and then Homer has a young child. I wonder if they're building something here where all of these characters have people who are dependent on them, who are vulnerable in some way. Either because I don't know how August would have been vulnerable, but Rachel's brother seems that because he's in a wheelchair, he's obviously disadvantaged. And then Homer has a young child. I wonder if Scott has someone that he's not. That the fact that he says he has no one makes me think there must be someone that he's just not talking about at this point.
Yeah, he's like, it's more of us. It's like if he was in the real world, he'd also say he had no one. It's sort of he's cut himself off from where he came from.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I love them. I love them going through, talking about a little bit of their backstory, just dropping little bits and pieces in there. I thought that was really a really nice way to reveal something about these characters.
Yeah, I agree. I love how Scott's just like, there's no one. Just tell the FBI. Which was quite endearing to me.
Yeah.
I will say that it's
not wrong either. I have to say, just tell the FBI is a pretty good shout.
Yeah. It does come out. Sometimes it comes out of the story for one of the group in the present day to ask a question. And like whenever they lose the thing that they were working on down the drain, because I think the plan was that they were going to get the letter and the ring, put it in an envelope to be sent out with the bills, right?
Yeah, they were going to put it back in.
So Jesse makes a good point. Jesse's like, those football rings are really clunky. Like, wouldn't Hap have noticed?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, why do you need the ring in the envelope?
Yeah, like just leave the ring out. Leave the ring out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you're writing a letter. Like, you can keep the ring.
I think it's like a proof that it's true. You know what I mean? But still, it's
but I mean, Homer's been missing for a year and a month. Like, it's not. They're not going to get a letter from someone claiming to be Homer and be like, "No, we'll leave it. We're not going to investigate that."
Yeah.
Like what?
You know what? You know what would have made me actually want to get off my ass and check this out? if he sent his ring.
Yeah, some kind of physical evidence, we would have pursued it, but it's not enough to go on. Despite the fact him like listing, descriptions of the area and it clearly being from them because they're including personal details. I thought I didn't actually catch what Buck says in this point, but Steve reasserts himself as the top of the dickhead food chain by referring to Buck as Michelle in this scene, which is one of the shittiest things I've ever seen a character do in a television show.
Well, especially considering that character has been referring to Buck as Buck this whole time.
Yeah, and like he knows exactly what he's doing.
You know it's literally just malicious. It's
he is just being a cock when he says that. And I was like, when he did that, I was like, holy shit, Steve. Like, that is awful. He's going to take some dethroning from the top of that shit list as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. Someone in the comments last week said that Steve is the new Bartos. I think Steve has gone beyond.
Bartos was incompetent and annoying and easy to poke fun. Bartos was the kind of person that if I were more malicious, I would have bullied in school, because he's an easy target. Whereas Steve is like, that man should be in prison because he is awful in every like conceivable way. Steve Bartos' redemption. We joked about Bartos, but like I could see his redemptive arc coming, and I was perfectly happy to have it because he'd just been kind of useless, and he was easy to make fun of. But I never truly hated Bartos aside from a couple of poor taste jokes he made. Whereas Steve has done a few things that are abhorrent in this show. It's going to take a hell of a redemptive arc to get me back on side with him. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so moving on, we get Homer. So Perry's really upset that plan didn't go well. So Homer then starts showing her how to do jumping jacks.
Yeah, we see the other side of Homer here.
We see the other side. Now, do you call them jumping jacks out of curiosity?
Yeah, jumping jacks. I don't even know what else you'd call them.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know if this is an Irish thing, but I grew up in Australia. And as a kid, we would have called them star jumps.
Oh, I've heard. Yeah, I have. Like star jumps. I think when I was really young, we would have called them star jumps. But the adult term is jumping jacks. Yeah, it doesn't
star jumps. Star jumps seems more serious than jumping jacks to me.
Do you think?
What's a jack?
That's like a good point.
The game jacks.
I don't know. Maybe that. Yeah, I don't know what that comes from. Maybe it's jacks.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
So tell us in the comments.
I love someone from a different part of the world not knowing what the game Jax is, and they're like, "What the hell is Jax?"
I mean, to be honest, if you asked me what Jax was, if you held a gun to my head and said, "Tell me what Jax involves," I couldn't tell you. I've never seen it played. I know it has a ball and the little spiky boys that you like throw or something, but
so it's literally just you have a little ball and there's little spiky boys on the ground, and you bounce the ball or throw the ball, and then you have to pick up a jack and then catch the ball again. And then you throw it up again, and then you pick up another jack and catch it. And you have to get all the jacks in your hand while not letting the ball hit the ground.
But can you only? So where's the challenge? Like you just
your challenge is you have to have them all in your hand. So you can't. You have to have you'll have 7 in your hand, and then bounce the ball. Have to pick up an 8th in your hand. And
with the same hand?
Ball. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right, fine. I was like, I could do that.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you still probably could do that.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, this is a game I mastered when I was about 7 years old.
Yeah, be a pro Jax player.
I mean, my hand probably is the same size as it was then, but it's still.
Yeah.
Still. Okay, so we get that bit of sort of building up of Homer and Prairie's relationship.
It is lovely, that bit. You see, because Homer, to be honest, to me, he came across as a little bit of a dick in his first scene, just because he was so desperate to see his plan enacted. And in this, we see. I think it's important that he had that moment because it makes this moment feel a lot more emotive because we know how much it meant to him, and he's still willing to be like, you know what? Let's forget about it. You're feeling shitty. I'm going to make you feel better. And I think this is the beginnings of we can see why Prairie will fall in love with, or maybe have such strong feelings for this character ultimately based on this interaction here.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the characters tell their stories, but we've already touched on a few of them. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them, except for the fact that I think that when Scott said that he just wants a cup of coffee and a cigarette and to sit on the stoop in the sun before the city gets loud, that idea to me, as well, the fact that we sort of have it hinted that he was an addict, it sort of implies to me that he was homeless in a big city That's what I sort of get from Scott at this point.
Yeah, or lived in like a drug house. That was my read of it. That you squat in a house with a bunch of other people taking heroin or meth or whatever it was that he was addicted to, and then but there was he still had those moments of clarity in the morning where he, like, before he'd had his first hit of something, where he was just smoking a cigarette out on the stoop, and like he could find some solace in that moment. It's quite a touching image, even for a character I didn't particularly like.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so last little bit of the story then. Actually, before we do that, Rachel sings.
Yes.
An extra level talent?
A transcendent. Well, I thought actually the thing I found quite interesting about this is she mentions how her voice changed after her accident, and it could just be adding color to her backstory, to be like, I could never sing again after I put my brother in a wheelchair. Maybe it's just that, but to me, there seems like there may be a similarity between Prairie losing her eyesight in her accident, and Rachel saying her voice changed after her accident. Like, maybe.
Well, Hap has already talked about the idea that people get these transcendent qualities.
Yeah. So I wonder if
Prairie's violin playing as well, which wasn't too transcendent in my opinion, but Hap has the ear. I don't have the ear.
Yeah, Hap knows. Listen, you can play one key, but if you play it as well as Prairie can, or one note, but you play it as well as Prairie can, real aficionados know that under the surface there's a I was going to say Mozart, but he played the harpsichord. I can't remember a really famous violinist, but one of them trying to get out. But yeah, so I think Rachel mentioning that her voice changed after the accident seems like quite a direct reference to the Arabic-speaking woman, and that kind of astral plane thing that we've seen before.
And she said she was hovering above the car. What do you take from that?
Yeah, well, so I think
floating above.
I mean, that is. I feel like that's quite a common real life depiction of a near-death experience. Like, people say when they have those near-death experiences, they feel like they come out of themselves and actually see
out of body experience.
Yeah, like an out of body experience, exactly. So I think it's partially that, and is also this idea of ascending to wherever Prairie went to that we saw in the first episode.
Interesting. Okay, let's just end it up. It sort of starts ending now the episode with a lovely comment from Hap. He's sort of getting lost in this relationship with Prairie now, because he says, "Is your hair different?"
I mean, for a start, obviously it's not, because she's in captivity. She can't go for a haircut, as well how. But also, I honestly don't know which of the hair-related actions of men in this episode is more poorly judged. Steve just grabbing at Prairie's hair when they're both sitting in a bathtub, or Hap desperately attempting to make kind of flirty small talk with a woman he has in captivity. Like, you're both as bad as each other, as far as I'm concerned. But the thing I really loved about this is, he's like making small talk, and he's he's like, "Oh, sorry about ruining dinner last night." Doesn't even know that she had plans to knock him out anyway. Like, and not mentioning the corpse that she found. Like, let's just he just wants to move on from that. And then wham, Pro's like, "Right, down the stairs you go."
Yeah.
And out the door.
Nice knowing you.
Yeah, I was like, good on you, Prairie. All right, get out of there. And God bless her. She makes a go of it. Doesn't get too far though.
I know, but I love, like, they're like, it didn't work with the envelope. It's like, they're all sort of hyping each other. We can try it again. It's like literally just push down the stairs.
Yeah. Prairie takes that to heart. It's like, on it.
Yeah. I won't miss my chance.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll probably talk about what happens in this scene, because there's something I want to talk about at the very end of it.
Okay, so she smashes the window, goes through, sees a quarry. Yeah. They have got What a Wonderful World playing, which was nice.
Oh, I didn't notice that, actually. That's interesting.
It didn't say that I See Trees Are Green part or anything like that, but it definitely was part of that song. But then she gets smacked over the head with what looked like the gun, like a arm.
Yeah. And then we see some stuff at the very end of the episode, which is interesting. You see like kind of little glimpses of stars, and like a blue circle that looks like a little nod that every time I guess I interpret it as anytime you suffer any kind of severe trauma or anything that brings you even remotely close to death, which let's be well, I think this is probably going to be realistic. If someone smacked you in the head with the butt of a gun, there is a not
that could be a near-death experience.
Yeah, you could very easily die from that. Like, that's a fucking hard thing to be hit with. And I feel like that, there's just this kind of little flicker of something that we've seen before, as if just to remind us that that's there hovering in the background. So I'll be interested to see if we see that again, because it's a really nice way to just kind of throw a little hook out there at the end of the episode. You're like, well, there you go, she's seen it again.
Well, there we go. That's episode 3, guys. You want to get into the breakdown, Konrad?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so IMDb rating for this episode, called Champion, by the way, is 8.3.
I think this is definitely the best episode so far, in my opinion. I think I'd probably say it's still slightly lower than that, just because I want to give myself more wiggle room for it to improve. So I'll probably say I'd give it a flat 8.
Okay, that's good. That's a good score.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good episode. I enjoyed it. I think best one. It had some really, really good characterization in it that I think stood out to me in particular, because I didn't like some of the characterizations of these guys from the previous 2 episodes. This one was really good. Great tension. I'm really liking the new characters we've met. I hope Steve falls off a cliff and dies at some point, but apart from that, I'm pretty happy with all the other characters.
Lovely. Awesome. I really like it. The name of the episode, Champion, I assume that's in a reference to Homer.
Yeah, as soon as we didn't actually mention this, but on the title card, it's his like ring underwater, presumably after it's gone through the drain. But when I saw it,
there you go.
But when I saw it at the beginning, because I didn't know what it was in relation to, I was like, it's that Super Bowl ring, and I was expecting like Tom Brady to show up or something in this episode and be like, "Don't worry, kids, I'll save you by throwing a 300-yard pass through the window of Hap's lab or something." But
and then he goes and gives his son an open mouth kiss.
Yes, exactly.
His 11-year-old son. But sorry to any Tom Brady fans, but that's all. Do
not apologize for that. That is weird. Whichever way you spin it, that is weird. Do not kiss your almost teenage son on the mouth. I stand by that.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough. All right, Konrad. So coming out of this episode, then you mentioned a few theories. Is there anything you didn't mention?
I think we got most of them. I think so. I've got August was Rachel's sister. The Arabic-speaking lady takes something from each of the people she encounters. This is a bit vague. Each of these characters has someone who depends on them. Is that kind of Rachel's brother being in a wheelchair and Homer's children. I think that's pretty much it, to be honest.
Okay, cool. Well, then let's get into some questions then.
Okay, let's do it.
A stranger from the outside.
First question comes from Archmaester Rennie, and Archmaester Rennie says, "Why does Hap gas the prisoners?"
I think it's to trigger an NDE. I think he wants to almost kill them. That's my or it's to subdue them so he can take them out and trigger an NDE somewhere else. It's going to be one of those two things. I'm almost sure of it. The thing I'm not clear on is why are there vents between the cubicles, if you like, because if the way you stop the gas from spreading is just for the people inside to put their hands over the vents, then that's not really doing its job. Why are the vents even there?
The vents might be there because they have to allow oxygen flow in general.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe. But yeah, so I think it's going to be one of those two things. And I guess it's odd. We see Scott again after he's gassed, in fact. So it's odd that he doesn't mention it. I think we do, don't we? I'm trying to remember when he gets gassed. Hold on. I'll refer to the notes.
Yeah, we might do, actually. Interesting.
Yeah, so he gets gassed like about halfway through the episode, and then he's back in it again. Because he's talking about like the I've got no one stuff comes after that. So
well, clearly it's not killing him then.
No, but I think there's a risk that it'll kill him. I don't think Hap wants to kill these people. I just think killing them is a risk of what he's doing, which is what happened to August.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, next question. And this is one that I'm very interested in. From Warmth in Winter.
Ooh.
Hey there. Question for both of you from a Konrad and a long-time listener. Thank you very much, Warmth in Winter. This is a Konrad, which means they haven't seen past this episode.
Nice.
So these questions are based on where they're up to. So actually, 2 questions. Well, I'll start with the one.
We'll see how we get on.
And we'll see how we get on. So a complaint I've heard / seen, straight away I have to say, don't listen to what people's opinions are of a show before you've seen it.
Yeah,
Next
I
up,
think that's a good idea.
heard, seen people make about this show is that the OA, it's a complaint people make, is the OA is a Mary Sue. Do you either of you think so? Okay, Konrad, I'll let you go on that first.
I mean, has she done anything that's out of the ordinary at this point? I mean, to be honest, I find anyone calling a character a Mary Sue, I'm going to say about 80% of the time they don't actually know what they're talking about. But and that is me calling you out, Star Wars fans. Fuck off. Unsubscribe. But I don't think we've seen Prairie / the OA do anything that's particularly superhuman or that a human couldn't do, really, have we?
Well, she did go to an astral plane.
No, but I mean that's not like her. I guess premonition is an ability she has, but like I don't think her going to the astral plane or wherever she goes is an ability. Like Mary Sue is a character who possesses the ability to do superhuman things without any kind of explanation as to how they do it. Like, you know, they pick up a sword and are instantly an amazing swordsman.
I think technically, yeah, but I think people also use it to describe like people who are just really good at everything without any flaws in their character, which I think is incorrect about Prairie too. Like we saw, she got kidnapped from by Hap because she was very flawed in that moment where she took herself off and didn't, basically trust the adults who were with her. Like she could have went to her parents and asked to go. So I think there's already flaws in the character of Prairie already. I will say about the term Mary Sue, I absolutely despise it. Because apparently I did some research before. I wanted to do some research before I said this and made myself look like an ignorant fool because I always did know this. Apparently, originally, the term Mary Sue could have been used for either male or female characters. Now, let's all be honest here. It's only ever used for female characters. But the fact that it can be used for male characters means people have an excuse and say, oh no, it's not sexist because we also could use it for a man. But it's never used for a man. And I'm just watched Rampage with Dwayne Johnson. And let me tell you, no one was walking out of that thinking what a Mary Sue that character was.
I mean that's exactly my point with the Star Wars criticism. It's like, you watch John Wick, like there's nothing to us. Like we just are told that he's an amazing hitman. He doesn't get anything showing that he's an amazing hitman. His dog gets killed and he goes and slaughters a bunch of guys. Like it's not. I don't think it's a valid criticism of anything. Or well, I think a lot of the time it's a poor faith criticism of a character that takes the place of what could be valid criticism of the writing if only the people who are making it stopped and kind of articulated their point better. But as you say, most of the time I see it, it's used as a vaguely sexist shorthand for I don't like this character. I'm not going to interrogate why. I'm just gonna dismiss them out of hand. And I think to talk about the OA, I don't get the sense that Prairie is particularly good at anything. To me, she seems like a very normal person who is trying to do good. I think she's made some very serious mistakes, which have led to her being kidnapped and held captive. If she was a Mary Sue, she would have grabbed the knife and launched it into Hap's chest from across the room,
and then hacked into the little keypad to get the
exactly. She would have bypassed the mainframe on the keypad, and then she would have used her daredevil blind senses to fucking navigate the lab and escape. Like that's what a Mary Sue would have done. And to be honest, if that's what the show ends up being, whatever, I don't care. Like it'll be fine. That'd be cool. If they want to have a training montage where Prairie becomes like a blind ninja, I'm all for that.
Well, and actually, Warmth in Winter in the second question, it is relevant then, says like, so let's take the idea of a Mary Sue. Instead of calling it a Mary Sue, let's say that you don't agree with the characterization.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it such a bad thing? So if Prairie was overpowered, if she didn't have any flaws, if she never made a mistake, would that be a bad thing for a show? My personal opinion is no.
No, I mean, it depends what kind of show you're making. Yeah. Like, not every character needs to have like their like backstory fully fleshed out in order to justify them doing cool stuff. Like some things are just dumb action movies, and you just have to accept them for what they are. But I think, if Prairie, if she develops, some kind of superpower, again, like if it depends on what our definition of this is, because if we're talking about her not being like a flawed character, I
think that's generally what people fall back on, rather than just like the superhero powers and stuff. I think people fall back on more reasonable things to back up why they're using the term. But I think you're right, and most of the time it is used on superhuman powers and how they got them and why are they such a good pilot and things like this. It's like, well,
I mean, the classic one is Rey picking up a lightsaber in Force Awakens, and everyone was like, well, she's a Mary Sue because she can just use a lightsaber without any training. And there were a lot of reasons why that's a dumb take, not least because you're watching the first movie in a trilogy and you need to watch what happened to that character before that point to understand it. But I think if we're talking about a character with no flaws, I think if you're perceiving, even at this point in the show, if you're perceiving Prairie as having no flaws, I don't think you're paying very much attention to her character.
Well, I will say that Warmth in Winter is posing this as something they've been told about the character.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying Warmth in Winter is saying it. Warmth in Winter, welcome to the Conrad Club. This isn't me attacking you. Don't worry about that. You're all good. I'm just I think if anyone was positing that as a criticism of Prairie's character, I don't think they're paying that much attention to her character, to be honest.
Yeah, and I would implore our listeners, anytime you're thinking of using the term Mary Sue in the future, if you could express it in I know it's fun to have a term for something, but if you could express it in a few sentences rather than just using that term, I think that term needs to be done away with now, because
it's like the phrase plot hole. Can we just launch that into the sun and never use it again? As I say, watch any The Rock film. If you took those films and you replaced them with Charlize Theron, everyone will be talking about how Charlize Theron was a Mary Sue. Like, that's just the fact. So let's move on. Okay, that's us for the week. I do have a few thank yous for some donations coming in. We have, with the help of some of these donations, we have actually just purchased Konrad a very, very good new camera. So in the next week or two, you will be seeing Konrad in full high definition. Yeah. And that would be fantastic. But those donations were from 5,004 Worth. Thank you very much. Karen Che, thank you very much. Thomas Trocker, thank you very much. Roughcorn17, thank you very much. And from Butiska. Now, awesome. Thank you, guys.
They all came through in January, so thank you very much to those people. I'm sure we've had a few that I've accidentally let slip through. If you've ever donated to us, I just want to say thank you very much. It really does help. We're able to get these fantastic microphones so you can hear us clearer. We were able to get Konrad a webcam first of all, and now we're going to get him an even better camera now. So we're always continuing to upgrade the quality. That's always our plan, to get a really professional looking thing going here for you.
Unfortunately, we've hit our ceiling in terms of content quality, but the present
we can't get any better.
No, we'll never get funnier or more interesting than this, but we can improve the image quality. That's what we can. I will also say there's plenty more sort of one-off videos coming with like reviews and thoughts of ours. They will be popping up on the channel every now and then. Look forward to my hour-long rant about Mary Sue's in Star Wars in the near future.
Jeez, there's going to be at least one person in the comments saying they want to see that now, Konrad. Yeah. All right, but yeah, guys, that's very much. Thank you very much. If you want to donate to the podcast, there is a link in the description. Apart from that, Konrad, any final thoughts this week?
No, I'm feeling kind of revitalized for the OA now. Like the first two episodes, I was a bit like, this is okay, but I'm waiting for it to really kick off. And this episode, I felt like was really the moment where it's like, okay, here we go. We got ourselves a show, boys.
Yeah, I knew it would get you. I knew, like, it is a slow start, and I've been telling you that for months, and I'm just finally, I like that you're sort of starting to get into it now. So it's going to be great. Subscribe on The Culture Cave on YouTube. Can you please also subscribe on audio apps if that's how you prefer to listen to your podcasts? You could send us an email at adpodmail@gmail.com if you have any questions or queries, anything like that. There is an After Dark t-shirt, which the link is in the description for, if you would like to pick up one of those as a memento for our dark time together. I love how I said that. Like the video, put a comment underneath for a question for Konrad for next week. Nothing else to say, except goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.